Good afternoon, everyone. Hope all is well. So, we are back again on this live session, and today we have a property developer, property investor, a keynote speaker, a property crowdfunder dealing with property in the UK, and we are going to speak about property, the market, and how did he get into this space. So we are going to be joining Mark Lloyd. Let's just send this over to him. There we go. Send. Super. So if anyone has any questions regarding property, do put them in here. Would be great to have your notes, your comments, your thoughts on where the property market is going. So we're just waiting for Mark Lloyd to join in. Here we go. Super. Good afternoon, Mark.
Hi, Murtaza, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Super. Thank you so much for
Can you hear me
coming.
okay?
Yep, all is good. All is good.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on this live in terms of joining me on the mission to share the knowledge in the space that you're in. I know you're a property developer, investor, crowdfunder, keynote speaker, and you help a lot of people get into the property space, invest into the property space. You talk about property, so it's good to have you here. And after a long time, I'm doing it with someone who is in the property background. So it's good to have someone within that background joining me today and sharing that knowledge with us. So thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, no worries. Good to be here.
Super. So before we start, Mark, if you could introduce yourself. I know I've given you a big introduction, but do introduce yourself as to who you are and what exactly is it that you do.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Mark Lloyd. I've been in business now for over 30 years. During that time, I've set up a number of different companies, sold a couple, started investing in property about 15 years ago. Didn't really know what I was doing. Decided to get trained in about 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And that kind of changed my whole perspective on everything, what could be done and what I'd been doing wrong. And I've got a long-term, well, I've got two actually business partners. I've got a long-term one as on the property side, which is Jackie. We've been business partners for 27 of my 30 odd years in business.
Wow.
A lot of the companies I've mentioned, we set up together. So got quite a large portfolio in different parts of the country. So we've got quite a large portfolio in Scotland that was there primarily for yield, because we get around about 14% there.
Yep.
We've got a portfolio in the northeast as well, similar kind of process. And then we've got another one in the southeast in Surrey and Hampshire, which is more for higher capital growth, but obviously not so much on the cash flow side.
So you're doing everything from down south, going all the way up north to Scotland. That's amazing. I mean, I want to know all about it. How did you get into the space and what did you do and everything? So I want to take you a few years, I mean, quite a few years back. I know you've got silver hair now, but quite a few years back into your childhood, into your teenage years, while we were all at school, university, college. When we were growing up, Mark, we see a lot of careers in front of us, and whether it's our parents, whether it's our uncles and aunties, our cousins, who've grown up, and we see them, we aspire to be like them, like maybe someone's an architect, a lawyer, a doctor. What is it that you aspired to be when you were growing up? Was it something that you wanted to get into the property space? You wanted to be an entrepreneur, or was it completely different to what you're doing today?
Completely different. Yeah, I think so. Growing up as a child, I was brought up in by my stepmother.
Okay.
And obviously my father was there as well, but he was a factory worker.
Okay.
And my stepmother didn't work.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of those kind of times when often the women in the household did not work, unlike today.
Yep.
So I rarely saw my father. So it's really mostly my stepmother. Wasn't a good relationship, but I was always motivated primarily because I didn't get pocket money.
Of course.
So I by the time I was about 14, I think I had 4 jobs.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 15, when I was 15, 4 jobs. So I was working, I had a paper round in the morning, paper round in the evening. I was working in Tesco's Thursday evening, Friday evening, all day Saturday. And I had a charity collection job, which I only did because they paid me. So
Wow.
that sounds a bit callous, but that's kind of the way it was.
And during these 4 jobs, did you go out and go to school, go to college, go to university?
No. So I was studying at the time. I was studying my O levels, then did my A levels.
And
after that,
on the side, you were managing these 4 jobs as well. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing. I mean, today you go to a 15-year-old or 16-year-old and tell them to go out and do a job, they'll be like, what's the point and what do I get out of it? What's my pay like? People are not, I don't think that the youngsters these days are motivated in a way where how youngsters and teenagers were motivated maybe 20, 30 years ago in terms of going out there and getting a job and funding life from the very start so that they can get to where they want in life. So you did all those 4 jobs that you did. You went to school, you did your O levels. How did you get about getting into property? I mean, was that sort of a long-term goal that took some time to achieve, or no? As soon as you sort of got your head around it, you were into property?
Well, I think, my because as a child, we were mostly renting. I mean, my dad did buy the council house that we were living in, but my mentality was rental mentality when I was a young man growing up, even until I was about mid-20s, I think it was. The thought of actually buying a property never even crossed my mind. But actually getting involved in property itself as property investing, a long, long way. It wasn't until I was 45, I think it was.
Wow.
And I'd built up a couple of businesses. We had money available, and it was just something we were starting to look at. It had never really crossed my agenda of, apart from owning my own house, of owning other houses. And it was only, I think, once we got educated about it, because I think, like, common misconception is you need a lot of money because the price of property. I'd worked it out in my own area. I thought, well, we can buy one property and then we're stuck. And it was only when we learned a bit more about it that we built a portfolio, quite a large portfolio. We have in excess of 60 units.
Wow.
Currently,
and that's all over. That's all over the UK. You're managing that. Your team's there. They're managing the rentals, whatever goes on with building and keeping that property portfolio in a good shape is what they're doing. So you did that. You started that at the age of 45. But going back, I mean, what led to you getting into property? What was the motivation behind it? I mean, sure, you said you started up your businesses. I mean, after you finished university or after you finished studying, did you go out and just start up businesses, or did you have a job that you were doing and then you sort of got into the 9 to 5, got tired of it, and then got into the business world? What was it that you wanted to, that motivated you to get into property?
So when I left school, went straight into work. I didn't go to university.
Okay.
Moved up to London because I was living in, I was brought up in Kent. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
Moved up to London. I had a job in banking.
Okay.
When I was there for, I think it was about 6 or 7 years, became a bank manager. And I just didn't enjoy it. I decided that I wanted to make my own destiny and went self-employed. I was selling life insurance, I think initially, pensions, that kind of stuff. And then gradually did various different sales jobs, and my sole motivation was I wanted to make it. It's simply that. It was no other reason. Purely by chance, I set up my first limited company And that was just a chance conversation with my local plumber.
Okay.
He was servicing my boiler.
Okay.
And we just had a chat, and we decided to set up a company together, selling central heating service contracts.
Wow.
I knew nothing about central heating, but I did know about selling. So
just to get to the point there, I mean, you had your guy who was doing your plumbing service, but was it a sort of a joint venture where you were the investor, or you were the business mind behind it, and he was the worker behind it in terms of doing the work, doing the plumbing, doing the heating service, everything, but you manage the business side of things, how to market, how to get out there, how to get our name known, how to get the brand out there. So you were managing. I mean, a lot of people sometimes think that how to get into a partnership with someone or what to do, you know. I think this is where you would say that partnerships don't work entirely you doing the same thing, correct? Both the partners
Correct.
doing the same thing. They could be doing completely different things, yet they're partners, but they are moving towards making that business known, making the brand known, getting that service out there, whatever means it be. You know, one's using the business charge, one's using the work charge, whatever it is, but yet they're both working together. I think that's a good point to get to where you want your business to go, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think if you've got complementary skills, otherwise, if you've got exactly the same skills, you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're loggerheads, but you've probably got different ideas as to the way things should be done. Whereas if you've got different skills, so Andre was the plumber, I was the sales side, if you like.
Yep.
And then we got two more people. We actually got two more people on board, and one was a very experienced marketing guy, and he took over that role whilst I concentrated on the sales. And then we also got another person, which is Jackie, who, as I mentioned, is my long-term business partner.
Yep.
That's how I met Jackie. She came into one of our businesses, and then the four of us kind of forged together and set up another. I think it was 3 or 4 companies after that.
Wow, that's super amazing. I mean, from one sort of just the guy coming up to your house to service your heating and your plumber, you went out and set up your business, and now that partnership is going on for so many years, I guess, you know, especially with your business partners that you have. So that was one part of the business. How did property come into all of this?
Well, I think it was, I can't remember the year, probably about 2004, 2005, probably somewhere around about there. I mean, that's when we bought our first property, which was overseas.
Investment property.
Yeah, investment property. Okay. It was overseas. It was designed to be, holiday lets, one that we could perhaps use, but we could rent out in the meantime. Okay. And the reason we bought that was, the company was doing well, and we were looking at things to invest in. What could we buy? And apart from, obviously buying cars is fine, but they don't really grow in value unless you buy a classic, of course. Of course. So we thought property. Clearly we were aware of property as an asset class, and you look at the Times 100, the Forbes 100, all those. They have property as part of their wealth strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so we thought, okay, we need to do something about this as well. I mean, it was a poor decision, I have to say, buying overseas, but we plumped.
I mean, where in overseas did you go? Did you go to Dubai or Spain, or where?
No, it's Bulgaria, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the next Spain. I stress the word "supposed to be."
Is that what the sales agent told you when he was selling you the property?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So we attended the seminar. It was all hyped up, a bit rah-rah, and we were caught up in it and ended up buying it. And then we ended up buying, after that, a UK buy-to-let as well. That wasn't either, to be honest with you, a terribly good purchase. It is now, but it wasn't at the time, just because we didn't really know what we were doing. And we got to, I think it was about 2000, beginning of 2009. And whilst we had a good business, we had a few knocks with customers that's taken advantage of us, and our turnover had dropped, our bottom line had dropped, and that happened a couple of times. And it happens in business. I mean, it's the nature of business, unfortunately.
Of course.
But it was just, for us, it was one too many, and we started looking around for things that we could perhaps do, sell the company and do something else. And again, this is purely by chance. I received a letter through the post from the Rich Dad organization just inviting me to a seminar about property. I invited Jackie along. We both went to this hotel in London. Yeah, within 20 minutes, we thought, right, this is the next thing we're going to do. This was it. And you know, good salesman, obviously, at the front of the room. But
of course,
we knew, having run various businesses, we knew how we were going to approach this. We just needed some help on building our knowledge up and some guidance to push us forward.
I mean, you mentioned about, I want to just take you back to when you invested in your first property in Bulgaria and the UK as a buy-to-let, and you mentioned that you made a quick or a rash decision in buying the property as a buy-to-let holiday home. But a lot of the new property investors or someone who's trying to get into property investing also have the same sort of issue as to no knowledge, no training, no finance, and possibly a relatively small amount of finance that they think that, okay, if I buy this property, it's going to go up in value and we're going to make a good deal out of it in a few years' time. Does that always work out when you make a rash decision, or it kind of hits you on the foot and you're like, now what? What do we do with it? Like, if you can just take me through, were you stuck with that property in a long-term basis, or did you manage to get out of or selling that property on or whatever? What did you get up to when you bought those two properties?
Yeah, so the overseas one we eventually sold. Okay. Decided it was a mistake. We got essentially our purchase price back. We'd lost money through rental and stuff, but we got that money back, which we were unable to invest in the UK. As far as the UK is concerned, I've always approached property as a business, not as an investment vehicle. And businesses thrive on cash flow. My focus has always been cash flow. And far too many people I talk to, particularly in London and the South East, talk about capital growth. And I said, that's great, but I can't spend capital growth. I can spend cash flow. Exactly. And if you look at the figures, cash flow in areas where there's high cash flow. So I've given you one example in Scotland.
Yep.
All right, we're not going to get that much capital growth. We will get some, but in percentage terms, overall between the cash flow and the growth, they're going to be very similar to a property, say, in London. It's just we're talking with lower values.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but my thought is that when, let's say, as an investor, I get asked the question sometimes that, where should I invest? What do I do? I've got, let's say, £100,000. Where do I go with it? And what my and because 75% of my business comes from the overseas market, the Middle Eastern market, the Asian market, they tell me that, oh, but London is the best option because I get a good capital growth out of it, But my question to them is, if you're investing £100,000 into property in London, what about your cash flow? Because in your capital growth, okay, yes, it might double, but that double will take 10 to 12 years maybe. What about the cash flow during those years? Wouldn't you rather go somewhere like Scotland, Manchester, Liverpool, where you're getting a yield of, let's say, 8 to 14%, like you mentioned, and your capital growth is lower, but then over the years, over a 10-year period, let's say, don't they both meet at the same point? Because you've made 14% for 10 years, and let's say your capital growth is maybe 5%. And the London capital growth is, let's say, 100%, but then you've only made 3 to 4% yield per annum. So over a 10-year period, if you put them together, they will end up at the same sort of growth level. Don't you think? Would that be right in saying that?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, obviously there are some regional variances, but in general, I think that's the case. And as I said, I much prefer cash flow than capital. Obviously, developments are different. You're aiming for uplift there, but generally speaking, for investing, it's all about cash flow. Yeah. And cash flow focus is always the thing I think people should aim at. It's one of the things we teach in our training company. So always.
And that's and this is where you started as well. Like you've built up your property portfolio of 60 odd number of units, and now you're teaching youngsters, property investors, property developers, whatever the age, of how to get into property, of how to build their property portfolio, and to get out there and make that cash flow, like how you're doing it. So your strategy is always has always been cash flow, correct?
Yeah.
What, I mean, would you ever think of changing that strategy to a capital growth strategy, or would you consider this your long-term game in, okay, yes, I'm getting some sort of capital growth, but then there is that cash flow level that's going up constantly? I mean, do you think you will always stick to the cash flow strategy, or you will change that strategy in some time?
No, I think the cash flow strategy when you start is in my opinion the priority.
Okay.
Most people I speak to, their reason for wanting to invest in property is to get out of their day job.
Of course.
That's the most common reason.
And the only way you can get out of your day job is have cash flow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why we focus on the cash flow. But having said that, you should have a capital growth strategy running alongside. So that could be flips. That's a type of capital growth strategy. You've got obviously developments, new build, you've got land, all those kind of things which provide a capital growth strategy. And so we run those alongside. We still add small amounts of cash flow to our portfolio, but we're adding greater amounts of capital growth projects.
So you're basically making them work together in line with each other, so that you never have cash flow problems and you never have capital growth problems.
Yeah, and I think when people start, they need to focus on one main bit to begin with, getting cash flow in.
Of course.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, flipping a property will create cash flow, but that's going to be at 6 to 9 month intervals rather than regular monthly intervals.
Absolutely.
So having a secondary strategy that they can run alongside, maybe focusing on something like HMO as an example, and then having flips or land finding as a secondary strategy that they run alongside is probably not a bad way to start for a lot of people.
And this is what you teach in your training, property training classes that you do for property investors. This is what you teach them in terms of how to sort of make cash flow and capital growth strategies work together, whatever it may be in property, whether it's land, whether it's new developments, whether it's HMOs, like you mentioned, whether it's a flip, whether it's a rental property that you're buying, whatever it is, make them both work together so that you get to where you want in building up the right property portfolio for yourself.
Yeah.
Super.
That's what we work on. And so, I mean, there's 3 of us in the training company, which is called, by the way, Property Master Academy. Myself and Jackie, I've already mentioned, and the third person is Peter Licorinos.
Okay.
Now, Peter's a little bit younger than the 2 of us.
Okay.
He, again, he's more of he's very good at the HMO market. That's one of his specialities, HMOs and sourcing.
Okay.
Two main areas that Peter's very really good at, and development. But he's a little bit younger and does more of our marketing than I do.
I think sometimes you need that young energy, right, to drive your company, drive your business into where you. I mean, obviously you've got the wisdom and the experience, but then you need a young person to sort of drive that wisdom and experience towards what you want to achieve. Mark, you also mentioned on your profile that you do a lot of crowdfunding for your property investments. Can you take me through that, of how you do it and what you do, and what are the key strategies of having the right sort of crowdfunding for the property projects that you may be doing?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the biggest problem of any investor is money, lack of money.
Of course.
For projects, always.
Because banks don't lend you, or if they lend you, then the interest rate's higher. If you don't go to a bank, there are bridging companies. Again, the interest rate is higher, all that kind of stuff. So why would someone go to a crowdfund?
Well, potentially a crowd-funded project could be 100% funded. In reality, it's not, but it will get very close. I mean, our one, which is a European-based company based out of Rotterdam, so we have access to Dutch, German, and UK investors.
Okay.
And so it's all done online, and the crowdfunding aspect of it. I think the last project we funded about 90% of the cost.
Wow.
which you won't get from a bank.
Of course.
You might get from a private lender. So all about, it's peer-to-peer lending. It's in the crowdfunding platform. Then that is re-lent out, and obviously we as a company make a margin in between. And it's crowdfunding over the past few years has really taken off.
Of course, I mean, every day I see people, whether it's an investor looking for crowdfunding, or whether it's a crowdfunding company that's looking for crowdfunding on their property, or whether it's an investor that has invested in that crowdfund for that property to get a generous return. What sort of returns do you work with when it comes to crowdfunding?
Well, so it's really up to the way our platform works is the developer that's applying for the funding. They decide how much they want to pay to the investors.
Okay.
Now, on average, we know that round about 8% works.
Okay.
So someone investing in the platform, the developer will pay them 8%. We charge the developer on top of that.
Okay. So whatever your fee is. So
Yeah.
So basically it's a platform. Anyone who's developing. So let's say, for example, just putting me into example right now, if I were to source a deal right now and I wanted crowdfunding for that, let's say it's a 3-bedroom house and I want to turn it into a 6-bed or a 5-bed HMO kind of property, I'll come to you and I'll say, Mark, I've got this property and I want to crowdfund on it in terms of doing the development work. Do you also fund the purchase of the property, or that has to be already owned by the developer or the property person who is looking for the crowdfund?
No, we fund the purchase as well.
So you fund the purchase, you fund the development and everything. And so I would come to you with a plan and say that this is what the investor would get out of it. This is what I'm looking for. And then post that onto your crowdfunding portal, and then let the magic work, right? So it's that easy to come onto your platform and to crowdfund for my property project.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to sell yourself to our subscribers, those that subscribe to the platform. So there are a number of things that we ask you to go through. Obviously, the figures got to be accurate. You'll need to provide a
feasibility report.
Yeah, for us as well. And then the decision as to what is paid is just made by you. We'll guide you, but you ultimately decide how much you want to pay the investors, because at the end of the day, you want to attract people.
Of course.
Now, what we will obviously want to know also is what your exit plan is. So, for an HMO, it may just be switching it onto normal mortgage finance once the refurbishment is done, and the property is filled with tenants.
Of course. So I can come to you and do anything that I want, but obviously you would need the details in terms of the reports, the financials. What is the exit strategy? Yeah. What are you paying your investors? What am I paying you guys for using that property portal, the crowdfunding portal? All those information, and then I can put my property on your books in terms of getting that crowdfund and just sit back and get the money coming in, rather than me pitching my business to the bank or a bridging finance company or a mortgage broker or whatever it is. Do you think this is the simplest form of raising? Do you think this is a simpler form or easier form?
I think it's it's a different way of raising finance. I think banks obviously take quite some time. Bridging companies can take a while as well. Some are very quick, some aren't. Crowdfunding decision as to whether the project is acceptable is within 48 hours.
Wow.
And then it goes live on the platform to attract investors. So that's where it differs, is that whilst it will go live very quickly, you've then obviously got to raise the money. So that's done partly through our existing subscribers, but we would also say to you look, you need to contact your database and point them to the platform.
Send them the link so they can come on there and just invest in the platform. And does the crowdfunding price range from something to something, or it can be anything that the investor wants to invest?
Anything the investor wants. So it's from €100 or £100.
Wow. and you keep all that data together with you in terms of who has invested what return they're getting, so that when the property project is complete, they get their capital back and they get their return back, and that's it. Everyone's happy. So
Absolutely.
the developer's happy that his development's funded. The crowdfunding portal's happy that they've managed to get that fund together for the developer, so that developer comes back to them again to fund another project if they want to. And obviously the investor is happy because he's done the investment, he got his return out of it. The trust has built in the portal, in the developer, so there are more projects coming that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't have to prove yourself again and again to a bank, to a bridging finance, to a market, to a mortgage broker. You just come to the property crowd fund, and they do everything for you once that trust is built, right? So that it's a win-win situation, I guess, for everyone.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, once you've done one or two projects, obviously you'll have a record on the platform, which will then show. But there's a promotional video we ask people to do, and obviously the financials and so on. But everything's done online, and everything is, the KYC information, that's all done online as well. So pretty straightforward, relatively straightforward compared, I think, to some other funding options.
Super. I mean, it was so amazing to know all these things from yourself in terms of how you got into property, what your strategy is in the property market currently. How do you help other investors, developers to fund their property? What an amazing business strategy you're running with. What an amazing job you're doing in terms of getting that fund out there to various developers where they might be coming to a dead end kind of in terms of funding their projects. Such an amazing story to listen to, and getting that knowledge from you. So anyone out there looking to fund their property or don't know how to get into property investment or buy a development or buy a property, I'm sure they can get in touch with you, Mark, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or via email, and they can check out your profile and see how you do it. But thank you so much for coming on here. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and getting a bit more information. I mean, I was a big fan of Property Crowdfund, but I just didn't know how to get my work around it. I will check out the profile and see the portal and see how it works, and I may even end up coming to you in terms of funding my property projects in the future. So let's see.
Yeah,
But before you go, Mark, I do this with all my guests that come on. We've seen a lot of negativity in the market. I'm sure for the property market, it's a different way. I mean, whether it's a recession, whether it's a pandemic, whatever it is, property does do well because everyone needs a property to live in, whether it's buy, whether it's rent, whether it's whatever. Property will always survive. Don't you think that's the case?
No, absolutely. Of course, yeah. Yeah, we're an island. We're not getting any bigger.
So before you go, if you can share a positive advice with the world today. We've seen a lot of negativity around us over the last year. What sort of positive advice would you like to share with them today so that they can take that on board, whether it's starting a business in property, whether it's buying your first property, whatever it is? What sort of positive advice would you like to share with them so that they can take it on board and move forward in life in whatever they want to do, whatever they want to achieve?
I would say stay focused on your goal, whatever your goal is. It's very hard sometimes to remain focused when you're putting your faith in something that you've not tried before. So if it's a new business or if it's something like property investing that you've not done before, you're putting your faith in that it's going to work. And a lot of people give up far too early, which is why there are so many failures in business. It's, most businesses will fail within their first 2 to 3 years.
Of course.
And that's no different in property. I think if you remain focused and get yourself some help, I've been fortunate throughout my life. I've had some very good mentors. I still have mentors today. And get some help from somebody if you're not sure what you're doing. It's a lonely world out there. Starting your own company, investing in property can be quite lonely too. So make use of what's available.
And the number one advantage or disadvantage, however you want to name it, is cash flow, right? Cash flow is king in whether it's starting your business, whether it's running your business, whether it's keeping your business at bay in terms of whatever situation that you may be put into.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you so much for joining me, Mark. It's been a pleasure, and I will speak to you soon. In the meantime, have a great weekend.
And you too, mate. Cheers.
Super. Thank you, Mark. Take care.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Bye. So that was Mark Lloyd, a property investor, developer, runs a crowdfunding portal. Do check him out if you're looking to invest in property, whether it's your first time, whether it's your second time, whether it's your 10th time. You're always learning, right? As a human being, whatever you're doing, whatever field you're in. I mean, I've been in property for 12 years now, but every single day you learn different things of how to possibly go about selling property or how to go about investing in property. So do check out Mark's profile if you're looking to invest, looking to buy, looking to crowdfund your property, whatever it is, do check it out. And thank you to Mark for joining me. Thank you to all the viewers that tuned in. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you again soon, maybe in the next 8 minutes. Take care. Bye-bye.